Welcome to Royal Subjects, your go-to podcast for anyone trying to navigate the ever-changing world of real estate.
Come with us as we explore topics that are always relevant, never boring, and designed with you in mind. It's coyote mating season.
You know what? It's funny because I read that article and I thought, oh, this would make interesting content. And I thought, why would it make interesting content? But it's just stuff that you don't always think about depending on where you live. And actually, I read another follow-up to that. Somebody posted in the Belleville Neighbors group, Quinte West Neighbors group, that someone's dog was attacked just behind the Canadian Tire by a coyote. So like, this is a real thing. I always like some of these, buzzworthy things that go in the news. You're just like, okay, yeah, but like what's actually going on? But it's real. So if you have a dog, don't let them out at night without keeping an eye on them.
Mm-hmm. Whether you live in a suburban neighborhood or a rural neighborhood, whether you have a fenced-in yard or not, because they're on the prowl. So
safety first. Speaking of scary things in the market, let's talk about a little bit of a real estate market update. What are we seeing in Belleville? What do we got on the go? Some houses are selling. Mm-hmm. Finally, it's taken a minute, but we've seen, how many were you saying? So we're mid-February, January till now. What are we looking at?
89 sales to now. 44 of them were in January. And of that, 25 were on the market for over 90 days.
Wow.
So
okay.
If your house has been on the market for a long time, whether it's priced correctly or incorrectly, or, maybe it's just a niche type of property, we're seeing some of those start to go. Buyers are coming out of the woodwork. Offers are coming in. So hold tight.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point too, because some of them have been priced properly, but there's just not been buyers. Others of them haven't been priced properly, and they've slowly started to reevaluate that as like, okay, you know what, we've been on the market for a minute. Maybe we need to reevaluate this. And then they finally said, okay, sure, let's knock a couple thousand off the price. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's the right buyer for that house.
It's an interesting time that we're in right now. There was a record low number of sales in most municipalities last year, especially in the November and December markets. And so we saw a large number of days on market, a lot of listings that were sitting, months of inventory was quite high. And we're seeing that all kind of change now. I think that's partly due to real estate professionals kind of, when we're gauging price points of properties, we're using, recent sales. And so with the last 2 months being, lower price points were selling faster, and things that were priced higher were kind of sitting. Those are factors that are contributing to what's happening now.
Yep.
The other piece of that puzzle is there are just more buyers coming out of the woodwork. I think what's going on with, rates being held and inflation situations, we're going to have an episode about that coming up. If you're not sure how that all works, we'll break it down for you. Mm-hmm. But I think those two factors are really tying into what's happening now. And I'm really interested to see what happens in the next couple of months.
I feel like the mindset of both buyers and sellers has shifted since the pandemic market. I feel like the challenge that we saw after, things started to stabilize a little bit was when sellers were looking to list, they said, well, my neighbor sold for X. I'm like, well, yeah, your neighbor sold for X in 2021 when things were absolutely insane. And so I feel like we're kind of on the tail end of shaking out the last little bits of unrealistic expectations from the seller side, and then almost the fear of the buyer's side of saying, oh, there's multiple offers. Oh no, like that means that it's going to go hundreds of thousands of dollars over. Multiple just means more than one. That's all that you're up against at times. And so I feel like we're in a more realistic mindset from both buyer and seller perspectives. And it's nice because I feel like we're seeing more success because we're now operating in just basic real estate concepts and a little bit less of that psychological, the fear-based mindset from the buyers.
Well, fear and comparison,
yes,
too, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the Instagram theory, like, oh, well, their life looks perfect and mine's not that great. Well, you only see the price tag. You don't think about the factors that, were affecting the market at that time. And that's where it's important to have an agent that is going to explain all of those factors to you. Yes, that house might have sold at this time, but here is the average sale price at that time. Here is the average sale price now. Facts and information are your best asset when it comes to battling comparison, fear, and, being realistic.
Well, I think it's important too that you give some space to the emotional side of things, because I think that even for the most logical, and I always find this too, especially if there's like a couple in the buying or selling dynamic, usually one of them is a little bit more facts detail oriented, and the other one sometimes is more riding the emotional wave. And it's really finding the balance of saying, like, it's okay if you feel this way, but here are the facts to support it. And here are the facts that might actually help to, you know, comfort some of those fears and concerns, or to support some of those fears and concerns and say, hey, this is, you are correct in feeling apprehensive about this. Here's how we strategize. Here's how we plan and course correct so that we can move forward. Because ultimately that's the goal, right? You want to move forward. You want to move the needle. You want to progress. But we have to work together to get from that, the mindset with the stats and the facts, how we're feeling, those moving motivators, because you have to acknowledge the fact that there are emotions involved in a sale. And I actually just had this conversation with someone the other day, because they said, I'm feeling very stressed, very apprehensive, and there's a lot that's going into this for us. And that's why I'm asking all these questions. And I said, I want to stop you right there. That's totally fine.
It's actually normal.
Please don't think that a real estate transaction has to be all facts, all stats, like a robot. Like, moving is one of the most stressful things that people can do in their lives. And you think about the reasons why people move. You got diapers, they're having a baby, diamonds, there's a new stage of their relationship, divorce, new stage of their relationship, or death. Unfortunately, these are the reasons why people move.
Or downsizing.
The
5 Ds.
And if you're in Trenton, you're also considering military postings, right? And we're kind of getting into that as well. And, you know, if you want to scroll back to the military postings episode, you can fill yourself in on that. But you think about all the different reasons why people move. These are some big, loaded emotional concepts. There's space for that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important. We've said it before. There's a transactional side and there's an emotional side.
Yeah.
And everybody is on some sort of sliding scale towards one side or the other. That's more important for them. But having, you know, working with someone who understands your position on that scale and can, you know, prepare you accordingly is really important.
Yeah.
I've been seeing it with, you know, I've been working with a couple first-time home buyers. It's a scary decision. It's a lot of money. Yeah. And you have this picture in your head of your dream home, and then you see the price point of that home and the price point of what you can afford, and it can be very much so emotional is the best word for it, honestly. And so with first-time home buyers, I think that emotional side is really important, you know, to be comfortable to talk about. Because if you aren't able to confide your insecurities or your fears or what's going on with the person who's representing you in your transaction, then you're not going to come out of it with a positive emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned this on Instagram the other day. Like, I feel like relationships are built in the driveway. And what I mean by that is when you go to see a property and you kind of have that regroup at the end of the driveway after you've seen the property, or maybe you've seen a few, and just kind of getting a feel for where people are at. Because I think you can meet with a buyer and have an idea of what their priorities are, but it's not until you go and see those houses and that reality starts to creep in of, okay, based on what I want in life and what I'm trying to fulfill in this purchase, is this house cutting it? Is this actually bringing up other priorities? Is this, you know, helping us to reevaluate where we're at financially and say, maybe we need to wait, or, hey, we need to move some money around because we're not going to let this opportunity slip. And I think it's really great when people let us in and just say, hey, look, here's the nitty gritty side of things. This is where we're at. It's a privilege to be able to walk people through some of these really difficult decisions and difficult times. But it's like I said to my clients the other day, like, I want the house part of this process to be the least complicated, least miserable part, right? You've got all the other life stuff and all the other, you know, emotions that go with these different life changes. Let that be the emotional part. Like, let me help you take care of the house part, because it's really exciting to see people move into that next phase of life, and whether it's for better or worse, you know, it's not always for good reasons, but to see them do so in a way that's successful and pleasant for them, right?
And that's where, you know, buyer consultations, seller consultations, building the relationship between yourself and your agent that's representing you first, and building that trust is really important, because you need trust. It's the first step. It's the most important step. If you don't have faith or trust in the person that's representing you, then it's going to be a much more difficult process when you have those hard questions come up.
Well, it sounds like the overall message of this is, you know, here's what's going on in the market, But then also because we're I feel like we're in kind of like a transitional period of the market.
Definitely.
We're not in the dead time where things aren't moving, nobody's going anywhere because, rates are so high and everybody's apprehensive. I feel like we are seeing some movement, but things are also not flying off the shelves.
We're in that nice middle ground.
Yes. So for buyers, it's like, hey, better get your sneakers on because things are going to start picking up. And for sellers, it's like, hey, hold on tight because those buyers with the sneakers are coming. And so, whichever field you find yourself in, having those conversations, having realistic expectations, or having a willingness to change your expectations is perfect. And you need to be having those conversations.
And so whether those conversations are happening in a coffee shop or at the end of your driveway, just make sure you're having them with someone that you're comfortable being honest and upfront with.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're having them at the end of the driveway, watch out for coyotes.
It's full circle, folks.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Sarah.
And we can't wait to talk to you next week. If you have any questions regarding real estate, please feel free to reach out at our website, theroyalgroup.ca, or The Royal Group on any social media platforms.
See you around.